Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate you giving us the time tonight. In just a minute, I'm going to be turning over to our good friends at Arrowstreet, our design firm. Tina will be going through an abbreviated presentation. We sent you an awful lot of materials ahead of time, and there'll be plenty more coming after that, I'm sure. This is following up on an update that we gave to the City Council last week. The Lincoln-Eliot project has been going on for quite a few years now. And we've been spending the last few months working to build consensus on the preferred concept. And I'm going to set the stage very briefly, just so that we know what that is and what it isn't. The preferred concept is the basic general building configuration on the site and the basic site configuration. This is not site plan approval. Site plan approval is a process that's similar to the special permit process. It's the city's version of that, whereby we work with our design review committee, the community, and the city council to work through that formal approval process. That will happen in late spring. So between now and then, we're going to do a lot of site planning and a lot of schematic level floor plans, working with the staff and our friends at Newton Public Schools, and a lot of folks giving many updates to the school committee. And just so that folks that are coming new to this understand, the role of the school committee when it comes to large capital projects like this is you identify the need and you establish the program / enrollment. After that, there's no more formal votes taken by the school committee. All the formal votes occur in other bodies, whether it be the building committees, which we mirror off of the state MSBA process, or various committees and commissions, either of the city council or appointed bodies, such as the DRC, which is appointed by the city council and the school committee. And that's where those votes take place. So tonight, we're really just looking for feedback and input. I will tell you that the meeting with the city council went really well. What many of them decided to do with their time was they gave us their feedback on kind of more site planning, which is after the preferred option vote that we're looking to take tomorrow night, if the building committee is ready. And that's great. If you have comments that will help us with our vote tomorrow, by all means, give them to us. If it's stuff that you'd like us to continue to study or refine as we move forward after that vote, by all means, let us know that as well. That's big picture. We have our good friends from Hill International, which is our owner's project manager, in attendance as well tonight. Several members of my team and Liam's team, all here to answer questions on the other end. Without further ado, I will introduce Tina to give her presentation.
Okay, so we will jump right into this, and I will try to go through this quickly but concisely. On the agenda here, we have a few items. We wanted to review through just school district and student distribution that really informed us in terms of where students are coming from, but also the traffic study. An initial traffic study was performed by our traffic consultant, MDM, and we wanted to show some of that information for you. And then we'll jump into the design options, as Josh had mentioned, where we had further developed the ad reno schemes as we studied for the preferred option, and then the criteria matrix. So, okay, school district and student distribution. So we looked at this just to really get an understanding of where students can be coming from within the district, from the various neighborhood and the blocks. This was a map that was shared with us from the Newton Public Schools. And what you see here, which you might be already familiar with, is the dark red are where you have a higher concentration of students. And then as the colors move to a lighter color, for instance, the red is 10 to 14 students. The orange is approximately 6 to 9 students. The light yellow is 3 to 5 students. And then the greens are 1 to 2 students. And this is per block. And then you'll also see that there's a little bit of overlap with the Horace Mann district, where some of those students may be attending Lincoln-Eliot. And just sort of try to group this into north, east, west, south, so that we know how students are approaching the site. The site is right here in the blue outline with the little flag here. And you start to see that from the west of the site, there's approximately 44% of the students. To the east is approximately 30%, and to the north is approximately 26%. And so this information also helped with the traffic study, knowing where parents might be coming from, driving their children to the Lincoln-Eliot School, or and the following slides will also indicate where students may be walking from, sort of the feeder streets to the project site. I will point out that the existing current Lincoln-Eliot School is just a block north of the proposed site. So it's right here. And then this red outline indicates the new Lincoln-Eliot site. North is Page North, basically. And these numbers that you see here, these are vehicular numbers, and these are percentages of increase for cars traveling to the site. And these are directional in a way where you're trying to approach the site on Jackson Road, understanding that that is the main road to the site. Obviously, there are other streets that surround the site, but the majority, we understand, will be trying to arrive on Jackson Road. And so what you see here is that there will be cars coming from the northbound and also from the southbound. And we're looking at more than one blue zone. So we know that we're trying to address this as cars are coming from both the north and the south. And then pedestrian safety is very important, knowing where these students are coming from, they're walking from. We wanted to show that there are currently 6 locations where there are crossing guards. So these are marked with this yellow symbol here, and it's noted as existing. And then now with the new location of the Lincoln-Eliot School, and the blue zone and walkers are now approaching to Jackson Road, or they're coming from the east, either through Wabbin Street or Pearl Street, and they may funnel through Jackson Road, or they may cut from behind and come on to the school property. And so we think that it makes sense to either potentially relocate one of the existing crossing guards or add a crossing guard. So we will study that further as we get into schematic design as well. And this, just to reorient you, now we have the project site rotated. So north is to the left of the page. Jackson Road is right along where my arrow is pointing to. The site is right here, and the existing building is right here. So with some of the information that we've already received from the traffic study and understanding where students are coming from, and the percentages of how they might be funneling through some of these streets. So you can see the yellow dashed line are where walkers may be funneling through to the site. And the blue dashed lines are vehicular approaches to the site. So again, you can see from the south, as parents are trying to make their way, they may be taking Washington Street and turning left or right onto Jackson Road, or they may be coming from Pearl Street or Jackson Road and funneling from the southbound, to the site. We're starting to also look at various components in terms of staff parking, some on-site, some to adjacent streets, and also where the main entrance may be, and the playground, how that might be situated. And we understand that the vans and buses may want to be as close as possible to the entrance for accessibility reasons. The site is large, and there is a grade difference from the street to the existing building entrance. And I'll talk about that a bit more. With so existing conditions, just trying to understand that it is a good size site. We know that it's a large site, but also there's a bit of a challenge where there's a topography change. And this is where what you're seeing is really sort of a bird's eye view of the building itself and a portion of the property. So you see the large parking lot that's in front. Jackson Road is along the bottom here. And what you're looking at in this illustration is a front elevation. So an elevation that if you're standing right on Jackson Road and you're looking right at the building, that there is, I'm going to zoom in a bit so you can see here, is that this red line is basically the road. So if you're standing on the road here and you're looking at the building, this is what you would see. You would see 3 stories of classroom. You would see here the auditorium, windows to the cafeteria, as well as the back of house area where we have the kitchen. And then this lower level is the basement. It's basically like a walkout basement where there's the mechanical rooms, the boiler rooms, and storage. But you'll notice that there's a dashed line here. So this dashed line is actually the first floor of the classrooms. And then the solid red line is the street. So there's a 19-foot height difference from the street, from the sidewalk, up to the first floor of the classroom. So we wanted to point that out so that it's sometimes when you're out on that site, it's a little hard to tell because there is quite a length from the road to the front door. These are a couple of building sections, and I'm going to zoom into this little key plan here so that you can see where the sections are cutting through. The first section you'll see is cutting right through the classroom bar and across the site, across the parking lot to Jackson Road. The second building section is cutting through the lobby, the existing lobby, and right through the auditorium. Below the auditorium is the cafeteria, and below that is the basement where the Newton School storage and maintenance and workshop is located. And so first I'm going to go through, point to this site here. So this top diagram here is cutting through the classrooms. And you can see it's quite a distance from this exterior wall across the site to the street. Again, it's a 19-foot height difference. And this distance is approximately 300 feet. So we have that distance, but we have that height to also deal with. So bringing pedestrians up, 19 feet, we have to think about steps, we have to think about stairs, you have to think about ramps that's accessible and meet code. This other building section here is cutting through the lobby, as I mentioned, and through the auditorium, the cafeteria. And you can see that several floors are sort of, or a portion of the floors are sort of submerged in the grade because of the sloping nature of the site. So they're able to sort of take advantage of having a fair amount of storage below, but also access from the street. But there are also some half levels that take you down to the cafeteria and up a level to take you to the auditorium. So internally, there are some heights that we are also managing with this design. And on to design options. When we last presented to the school committee, we have presented some ad reno options, and so what you see here, and we also presented some new construction options. So the new construction options are now eliminated, and we're looking at only addition renovation options. And so we had presented to you 6 of these options, and since then, we had further developed and studied a few more. So now we have a total of 14 options that we're looking here. And a lot of these options are really trying to study the relationship of the new addition to the existing building, making sure that the programming from the space programming and the educational plan fits within the building, within the existing building, as well as the new addition. We looked at potentially demolishing a little bit more of the existing building and potentially providing a slightly larger new addition. And then similar where we looked at a number of site configurations meaning where the blue zone may be in relationship to the site in the building, where the van drop-off and pickup locations are, as well as the bus, and those relationships to each other are all very important of how you approach to the site, and from those drop-off and pickup points to the building, to the entry, but also looking at where the main entry may be, where secondary entries, as you saw, students are really approaching the building from all sides. But also looking at the outdoor play space and how that relates to the building, how that is maintained safety with blue zone drop off and vans and buses in the morning or in the afternoon, while students are also walking across the play space, across the streets and so forth. So a lot of those we looked at and studied very carefully. And with that, so we went back to the criteria matrix, went through the criteria that had set forth when we looked at the addition and new construction. And so with that, we found that these three options, option one version 3, and option 2B, basically had the highest grade. So in terms of grade, if we were to grade these, those came on top. And as Josh has mentioned, in the packet that you had received, you saw the matrix that looked something like this. And in the yellow are the new options that we had just went through. So those all had received some sort of grading, whether it was favorable, neutral, unfavorable. And then on the bottom here, we were trying to calculate the results of each of those options. And I'm going to zoom in here so you could see a little bit better. Oops. Let me see if I can make this a little bit better. And so these are the bottom where you have the results. And as I mentioned, option one version 3, and option 2B. So those are the highest. It ranged from about 20 points to 18 points. The other options has less points than that. And we also thought it made sense for you to see what the previous calculated results are, where option 1 sort of remained more favorable. A version of option 2, which was option 2B, sort of remained at the top. And actually option 2 is not that far off from option 2B. And then you can see here version 3 of option 1, which was one of the newer developed schemes, also graded highly in this case.
And Tina, I would just add that those previous calculated results are from when we were comparing them to the new construction options. So basically what that's showing is that the options that graded very high previously are still grading pretty high now. And some of them were refined when you see option 1 versus option 1v3. Those refinements show that there's merit to some other tweaks within those sub options. So
thank you, Josh, for clarifying that. And so with this, I'd like to open it up to any comments or questions.
Can you guys talk a little bit about what you're thinking about the cafeteria and auditorium wing, and if we demolish the convent or demolish the convent and chapel, what that all means and looks like, and give us a few insights.
Yep, absolutely. Sorry, Josh, if you want, I can speak to it and feel free to jump in.
Yeah, go ahead, Tina.
Okay, yeah. We certainly studied in all of these options where for instance, in option 1, and its variations, we looked at demolishing just the convent and maintaining the chapel, but renovating obviously for a different use, the classroom bar, and also maintaining the existing auditorium and cafeteria. The option 2 and its variations, we thought we might take it a little bit further and demolish the convent as well as the chapel, but maintain the classroom bar, renovating that, and also maintaining the auditorium and cafeteria. Option 3 is where, and also its variations, is probably the most extreme, where we only maintain the classroom bar, but the existing auditorium and cafeteria is demolished. So in this case, there's more new addition that would be required. So since the auditorium is demolished in these options, we are proposing a cafetorium in place so that it still provides the program that it needs for the Lincoln-Eliot School.
I think I understand that, but tell me what the, since it doesn't look like, it looks like so far we're recommending keeping the auditorium, cafeteria, storage. So how's that going to look in the future? What does renovation look like and mean in the future?
Yep.
And talk a little bit how we get from the 3 options we have now down to 1.
So Tina, if you'd like, I'm happy to jump in on this. So,
Sure.
And feel free to Zoom. I'll let you walk through what the plans are for the CAF. But Mayor Fuller, certainly it feels as though we're leaning towards keeping the auditorium and the cafeteria. Those options are coming to the top. The convent is definitely going to come down. The chapel may or may not come down. That'll be something we continue to study. There's pros and cons to that. And just to be clear, that chapel doesn't mean we would renovate the chapel to become a chapel. It means that we would be renovating the chapel to become office or administrative or support spaces. But all spaces in the building would be renovated in conjunction with this project. And how we best utilize the cafeteria. We know the cafeteria will become the cafeteria, but it was built for a much, much larger enrollment. So it's very large. So some of that space we're going to want to repurpose. And part of the schematic phase, the next phase after the preferred option vote, will be to evaluate different scenarios in which we repurpose and utilize adaptive reuse for some of those spaces to meet the Lincoln-Eliot School program. But Tina, if you want to jump in as far as how you see us utilizing those, by all means.
Yes, absolutely. As Josh had mentioned, the cafeteria, and it makes sense to try to renovate that, but also carve out some space that maybe can be used for example, we had studied potentially art room or music room. So it's adjacent to the cafeteria, and there's space for that, but also maintaining the necessary area for a cafeteria. It makes sense to potentially keep the kitchen where it is, obviously renovated with new equipment, so it's up to date and it serves the needs that the school needs. However, you'll also notice that in a lot of these schemes where we are keeping the auditorium, we're adding a gym. So the new addition is a gym, since the existing building does not have any sort of gym space. Or any space that's large enough to for a gym, which is approximately 6,000 square feet. And with that, there's also some additional new spaces that would be required to meet the space summary and the program that the school is requiring. And in those relationships, you can see, I'll talk a little bit about the site plan. And what we're really thinking is that having a gym on one end and the cafeteria on the other end, it makes a lot of sense to have the outdoor play space in the center. So you can understand that with recess and lunch, that there's a good relationship between the two, but also with gym, PE, and the playing field or the blacktop, that there's a good relationship as well with that. And so the scheme 2, I'll just pan over here so that you can see. In this scheme where we are looking at potentially demolishing the chapel as well, that really gives us an opportunity in terms of a main entry, a new lobby, and admin space that has a nice connection between the gym, the new addition, to the existing building.
And then the last question the mayor asked, which was, we're currently looking at 3 options that are scoring highest. How do we get from 3 to 1? So ultimately, when you look at those three options, they're very, very similar in many ways. One could make a case that you could pick any one of those and the preferred option could evolve into any of those three models. So ultimately, what we're trying to do tomorrow night, the more clarity and specificity we can give our design team, the better. But for instance, I would fully anticipate that regardless of the option that is selected, that the exact placement of the gym, whether it gets angled to open up the courtyard or if it stays more 90 degrees, that's something that will continue to be studied. Anybody that remembers the cabinet school project, we slid that gym around a few hundred times before we finally found exactly where we wanted it. That happened well after the preferred option votes. Just one example of things that will continue to be evaluated.
So I think Cove doesn't have a question, but Paul, you did, and we'll continue in our reverse order. Paul, then Chris.
Thank you, Tamika. Josh, I don't mean to get into the weeds, pun intended, but I know part of your construction plan is to put irrigation on the playing field and the playground. And I'm wondering if it would be appropriate to put a condition into your commitments document that you'll evaluate the use of well water for the facility rather than municipal water.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that comment. And I will clarify, we will not be planting weeds as part of our project. That will be lush grass when we turn that building over. But certainly we can definitely do some, we'll end up doing some borings for our project, and that might give us some insight into what our hydrology looks like and our water tables. And then explore opportunities to go well when that time comes. But that's a great point, because water is a finite resource and it's not getting any less expensive. That's for sure.
Thank you.
Sorry, everyone. I was trying to play with my volume and you caught me. Chris, I think you're up if you have any questions.
Yeah, just one quick question. Thanks for the presentation. I'm not sure what the proportion of students who are walking versus being dropped off, van, bus, etc. But given the blue zone exists on both sides of Jackson Road, in particular heading southbound, having the need for students to cross Jackson Road, and the now increased proximity to Jackson Walnut Park, which looks like it has fairly overlapping drop-off and pickup times. Does that present issues?
It presents opportunities. That's what we like to say. No, it's a challenge. There's no doubt about it. We've been sensitive to that since the beginning, that between Montessori and Jackson, the Lincoln-Eliot School, which will eventually become a swing school, the new Lincoln-Eliot School, these are all things that we're factoring in. Blue zones are going to be something that we continue to evaluate. They are on all of our projects. They're fickle. And in this case, the counter blue zones may or may not work. If we were to do it, we've been pretty clear that we're going to need a signalized crosswalk there that stops traffic. We need to make sure that it's safe. But one of the common comments that we've heard from our design review committee, as well as our building committee, and our internal meetings with our transportation folks, is that we should try our best, regardless of whether we end up with the blue zone configuration as it's shown. We should try our best to see if we can further promote walkability and bikeability, but also B, look at drop and go programs to see if there's any off-site, not way off-site, but off-site blue zones or ad hoc blue zones that we could create with a nice, safe walk to school that would alleviate pressure on Jackson and potentially allow us to eliminate or shorten up some of those blue zones.